After studying this module, we shall be able to appreciate the role of new trade theory in explaining trade patterns in certain industries, evaluate the diamond of the Porter's theory of national competitive advantage, understand intra-industry trade explaining suitability of trade theories to certain kinds of products. We must be aware of country similarity theory and product life cycle theory. This module provides an insight into the other modern theories of trade, that is, new trade theory and Porter's diamond national competitive advantage model.
Comparative advantage theory was based on constant returns to scale. However, the assumption of diminishing returns to specialization seems more realistic. This occurs when more units of resources are required to produce each additional unit. But in the 1970s, certain economists questioned the assumption of diminishing returns to specialization in international trade. They pointed that the countries trade not only to take advantage of the differences but to attain increasing returns that make specialization advantageous. Hence, this leads to the emergence of new trade theory in the 1970s by Paul Krugman and other economists. This trade theory is known as strategic trade theory.
To begin with, let us first understand the evolution of new trade theory. In the 1970s, certain economists questioned the assumption of diminishing returns to specialization in international trade. They pointed that countries trade not only to take advantage of their differences but to attain increasing returns that make specialization advantageous. Hence, this led to emergence of new trade theory in 1970s by Paul Krugman and other economists. This trade theory is also known as strategic trade theory. According to new trade theory, trade is mutually beneficial as it brings in specialization of production, realization of economies of scale, the production of wide variety of products and lower prices. Let us understand the pattern of international trade through various contributions made by new trade theory. The assumption of increasing returns give rise to imperfect competition that prevails due to economies of scale. There is a proposition that inter-industry trade determines the factor of Heckscher-Ohlin theory, whereas increasing returns which result from specialization within the industry drives intra-industry trade. Thus, there is a coexistence between comparative advantage from factor endowment differences, and increasing returns from economies of scale. Importance of externality is realized by new trade theory in international trade. Externality prevails when the action of one agent directly affect the environment of another agent. Government policies, political relations between the countries, consumption difference between different cultures, etc. are included in externalities. These externalities are considered as alternatives to comparative advantage which directly influence international trade.
Several contributions have been made to the understanding and development of international trade. An industrial organization view has been incorporated in the new trade policy, where new trade theorists argue that increasing returns to scale prevail due to economies of scale. Economies of scale are the reduction in the cost per unit as a result of the large quantity of output. The assumption of increasing returns gives rise to imperfectly competitive markets. For instance, automobile companies experience economies of scale by manufacturing large quantities of automobiles from an assembly line where unique task is performed by each employee. Thus, by analyzing the major impact on economies of scale, trade will result in enhancing the variety of products available to consumers, and simultaneously there will be reduction in the average costs. New trade theorists suggest that factors of Heckscher-Ohlin theory are determined by inter-industry trade. On the other hand, increasing returns which results from specialization within the industry drives intra-industry trade. Hence, there is coexistence between the comparative advantage from factor endowment differences and increasing returns from economies of scale because of differences in the application of inter versus intra-industry trade. Importance of externality is realized by new trade theory in the international trade. Externality prevails when the actions of one agent directly affect the environment of another agent. Government policies, political relations between countries, consumption differences between different countries and cultures, etc., are included in externalities. These externalities are considered as alternatives to comparative advantage which directly influence international trade.
The new trade theory focuses on 2 points: increasing product variety and reducing cost, and economies of scale, first mover advantages, and pattern of trade. Thus, this theory requires industry with high fixed cost. In industries where there are substantial economies of scale, world market will profitably support few firms. Competitors may emerge because of first mover advantage. However, government also play a crucial role in instituting strategic trade policy to assist industries in achieving national competitive advantage to make a shift from perfect competition to managed competition. This theory mainly covers oligopolistic industries.
Considering that there is no world trade, it is difficult for producers to realize economies of scale for products whose market is not wide. Thus, this results in limited production of products in the market. On the other hand, the size of the market expands if nations trade with each other. In such a case, economies of scale are realized. According to the new trade theory, trade is mutually beneficial as it brings in specialization of production, realization of economies of scale, the production of wide variety of products and lower prices. International trade is also influenced by economies of scale and first mover advantages. The advantages that accrue to early entrants into an industry are first mover advantages. The output that is required to achieve economies of scale signifies a larger proportion of total world demand of that product. Under such a situation, only few firms get support, and the firms first to establish enjoy the first mover advantage.
Thus, it is concluded that new trade theory helps in realizing economies of scale, incorporating real life imperfect competition in international trade, and also suggesting intra industry trade between nations.
Strategic trade policies have been instituted by the national governments to assist industries in achieving national competitive advantage. The main aim of these types of policies is to make a shift from perfect competition to managed competition. This theory mainly covers oligopolistic industries like aerospace industry. Boeing Airbus instance can explain this theory, assuming that there is only one room for one firm in the international aircraft market. If two firms decide to produce, then both will incur losses. But if one firm produces, then producing firm will generate profits. In this situation, if large amount is committed by European government to subsidize the production of aircrafts by Airbus rather than the expected loss if both the firms remain in the market, then Airbus will be the leader of the whole market. Simultaneously, Boeing will quit. Thus, government intervention is very crucial when firms play strategically in international markets. However, World Trade Organization rules prescribe that no subsidies should be given, and these create barriers to free trade.
There are certain implications of strategic trade theory. There is advantage of mutual gain irrespective of differences in factor endowment, which results in increasing product variety and reducing costs. It is seen that there is a country's dominance in export of good which binds the first movers in the world market. Consequently, it would discourage subsequent entry because of their ability to gain economies of scale. This theory is at the variance with the Hexter-Ohlin theory because Hexter-Ohlin theory explains only the part of trade. On the other hand, this theory is not at variance with comparative cost advantage theory. Rather, it identifies an important source of comparative advantage as economies of scale increase productivity.
The strategic trade theory suggests that trade provides an advantage for mutual gain irrespective of differences in resource endowments. This results in economies of scale, that is, increasing the variety of products and lowering the cost. The Boeing Airbus instance shows countries' dominance in the export of good because it feels lucky to have one or more firms among the first to produce that good. The first movers in an industry may get locked in the world market that discourages subsequent entry because of their ability to gain economies of scale. Hexagon theory explains only the part of the trade which is at variance with new trade theory. However, this theory does not replace Hexagon theory but complements it. Hence, the theory suggests the predominance of a country in the export of a product when it is well endowed with those factors used intensively in its manufacture. On the other hand, new trade theory is not at variance with the comparative advantage theory. This theory identifies an important source of comparative advantage as economies of scale increase productively.
Let us now proceed to discuss the Porter's Diamond National Competitive Advantage Model. Michael Porter of the Harvard Business School framed a new model known as National Competitive Advantage Model in 1990. He suggested that the microeconomic foundations of the productivity focuses on two aspects: sophistication with which companies operate and quality which microeconomic business environment possess. Highly skilled labor, information, improved infrastructure, advanced research institution, and competitive pressures are required for sophisticated operations and strategy of company. There has been focus on shifting from comparative advantage to competitive advantage. Different strategies have been suggested for low income, middle income, and high income countries by Porter because weaknesses at the advanced level were strength at the earliest level. Now, the effort has been taken to move to sophisticated ways of competing, which depends on changing taking place in the microeconomic environment. This microeconomic environment has been termed as determinants of national competitive advantage.
The early trade theory emphasizes on the country or particular nation and analyzes the factors which enhance competitiveness. Later on, it switches to the industry or the product level, leaving behind competitiveness at the national level. Now, the attention has been paid to how the conditions can be altered within a country by countries, governments, and private industries so as to maintain the competitiveness of its firms. Michael Porter of Harvard Business School is the renowned leader in this research area. In 1990, Michael Porter framed a theory of national competitive advantage that is originally published in his book, The Competitive Advantage of Nations. He felt that old theories of international trade explain only a part of the story. Thus, his task is to explore the achievements of international success in a particular industry by a niche. Initially, countries' competitiveness was intuitively measured so as to determine its share in the world market. However, the real measure of competitiveness is productivity. Through this, nations will get support of higher wages, return on capital, strong currency, etc. Moreover, it is the companies that export rather than the nations. An economy cannot achieve comparative advantage unless the companies operating there are competitive. The microeconomic foundations of productivity focus on two aspects: the sophistication with which companies operate and the quality which microeconomic business environment possesses.
Four broad areas have been defined by Porter to shape the environment in which local firms compete and which lead to creation of national competitive advantages. These are factor endowments, demand conditions, related and supporting industries, firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. These attributes form a diamond. Success occurs where these attributes exist. Let us now discuss the four determinants in detail. Factor endowments or factor conditions. Although nations' factor of production are important in determining the pattern of trade, but they are the only source of competitiveness as suggested by factor proportion theory. It is the ability of a nation to continually create, upgrade, and deploy its factors, such as skilled labor. That is important, not the initial endowment. Demand conditions. Porter notes that it is the character of the market, not its size, that is paramount in promoting the competitiveness of the firm. Related and supporting industries. A firm that is operating within a mass of related firms and industries gains and maintains advantages through close working relationships, proximity to suppliers, and timeliness of the product and information flows. Firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. Porter notes that no one managerial, ownership, or operational strategy is universally appropriate. It depends on the fit and the flexibility of what works for that industry in that country at that time.
Heckscher-Ohlin theory proposed that comparative advantage arises due to differences in factor endowments. Factor endowments explain the endowment of the country with resources, such as land, labor, and capital. Porter differentiated between two factors, basic factors and advanced factors. Basic factors are naturally endowed factors which include natural resources, climate, location, demographics. On the other hand, advanced factors include communication infrastructure, skilled labor, research facilities, and technological know-how. The complexity is seen in the relationship between these two factors. Investment by individuals, companies, and governments constitute a product of advanced factors. There is a proposition that advanced factors are necessary for achieving national competitive advantage. Initially, advantage is guided by basic factors which require an extension in investment of advanced factors. It is basically the disadvantages in the basic factors that lead to make investment in advanced factors. Home demand plays an important role in providing competitive advantage. Needs of customers should be taken into account. Competitive advantage is accomplished by firms in a particular nation only if their domestic consumers are well demanding. Efforts have been made by domestic firms to pursue innovative ideas in manufacturing products of good quality. Related and sporting industries represent the presence or absence of related and sporting industries which show their competitiveness in an international economy. Investments made by suppliers and related industries in advanced factors assist in getting a strong competitive position internationally. The main result of this determinant is that industries which have achieved success comprise of a group. This group is signified as a cluster of related industries. Formation of clusters is necessary so that there is movement of knowledge whenever employees shift between firms within a region. For instance, German textile and apparel sector is a cluster which includes better quality of cotton, wool, sewing machine, needles, etc. This cluster is benefiting all within that cluster. Firm strategy, structure and rivalry makes important characterization of nations by different ideologies of management that either assist them or do not assist them in achieving national competitive advantage. Moreover, there is a strong link between domestic rivalry which pressurizes firms for better efficiency in order to become good competitors and creation of competitive advantage in an industry.
Porter proposes that there are two additional variables that influence national diamond: chance and government. Chance events such as innovation and creative idea can reshape the structure of industry, and the other one is government, which can detract from or improve national advantage by using its policies. Let us now evaluate the Potter's theory. This theory is a hybrid theory which shows that the presence of all four determinants is essential for diamond to achieve the national competitive advantage. There is a contention that endowments are influenced by the government regulations, which simultaneously is affected by subsidies, capital market policies, or policies that influence consumer needs. Related and supporting industries are influenced by the government policy that influence firm rivalry through tax policy, antitrust laws, etc. This theory creates a favorable environment in which Firms are actors who actually participate in international trade. Countries should be exporting products from those countries where four components of the diamond are favorable, while importing products in those areas where the components are not favorable. Let us evaluate the concept of intra industry trade theory, which describes why countries often export the same goods they import and how they usually gain from this type of trade. Here, the meaning of industry is to be clarified. If the definition is broader, like a personal computer defined as office machinery, then pencil sharpener will also come in the same industry. Thus, broader the definition, more trade appears to be intra-industry. Generally, this trade is greater in high-tech industries where the rapid growth of products leads to product differentiation. There is usually a common intra-industry trade when there is preference of acquired advantage over natural advantage. Moreover, internal economies led to monopolistic competition. Entry of new firms increases competition, which leads to decrease in price. Each firm sells few units of output by dividing the market and therefore costs rise. Hence, the presence of internal economies is the reason why firms want to enter export markets.
It is known that traditional theories are useful for homogeneous, undifferentiated products, whereas modern theories are useful for heterogeneous, differentiated products. Newer trade theories relax the assumptions of constant returns to scale. These theories are based on the premise of the economies of scale or decreasing costs. New trade theories also rely on imperfect competition. Evidence shows that intra-industry trade is greater in high-tech industries where the rapid growth of new products leads to product differentiation. As nations' income increases, this kind of trade also increases. Big firms experience the advantage of internal economies, but in case of external economies, the size or scale effects are located in the industry, not the firm. International economies lead to monopolistic competition. Entry of new firms increases competition, which leads to decrease in price. Each firm sells few units of output by dividing the market and therefore costs rise. Hence, the presence of internal economies is the reason why firms want to enter export markets.
Benefits of intra industry trade are: market share is enhanced, which leads to decrease in costs. Increasing competition pressurizes firms to pass their lower cost of benefit to consumers. By analyzing the advantages of intra industry trade, it is concluded that the pattern of international trade enables these firms to produce effectively, thereby achieving higher efficiency, which would raise everyone's income through reduction in prices. This would also increase consumer choices. In this module, we have learnt the contribution made by the new trade theory in explaining the pattern of international trade and its strategic implications. We have also discussed the Porter-Diamond theory, that is, national competitive advantage theory. Further, we have also discussed the concept of intra-industry trade theory and benefits of intra-industry trade.
New trade theory was developed by Paul Krugman and others in 1970. This theory focuses on 2 points: increasing product variety and reducing costs and economies of scale. First mover advantages and the pattern of trade. New trade theory describes that in industries where there is substantial economies of scale, imply that world market will profitably support only few firms. However, countries may predominate in the export of certain kind of products because they had a firm that was the first mover in that industry. Some new trade theories have promoted the idea of strategic trade policy. Porter's theory of national competitive advantage focuses on broad areas: factor endowments, demand conditions, relating and supporting industries, firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. These four determinants constitute a diamond. The effect of one determinant is contingent on the state of others. Two additional variables that influence national diamond are the chance and government. Chance events such as innovation and creative idea can reshape the structure of industry. On the other hand, government can detract from or improve national advantage by using its policies. Intra-industry trade is the trade within the same industry. For example, steel for steel. Intra-industry trade is based on imperfect competition, economies of scale, and product differentiation. New trade theories are suitable in high-tech industries showing heterogeneity of the products. Hence, theories of international trade are crucial to an individual business firm because they can help the firm decide where to locate its various production activities.